I didn't mean for dinner to happen. It was supposed to be a quick stop, a small favor, a polite thank you, nothing worth remembering. But I remember every second. The garage smelled like rain and engine oil that night. The fluorescent lights buzzed like they were tired too. I'd just finished changing out a clutch when she walked in, heels clicking against the concrete, umbrella dripping onto the oil-stained floor. "Is this still open?" she asked. Her voice was calm, but it carried something, like she already knew I'd say yes. I turned, wiping my hands on a rag that used to be white. She looked composed, not in a distant way, but in the way of someone who's used to keeping things under control. A tailored navy coat, faint perfume, hair swept back, but not in a way that tried too hard. She didn't belong in a place where everything smelled like grease and exhaustion. "Yeah," I said. "What do you need?" Her car was parked just outside, a dark sedan, rainwater streaming down its hood. A flat tire. I told her I could fix it, that it wouldn't take long. She nodded, folded her arms, and stood under the flickering light while I worked. She watched quietly, not the kind of watching that makes you self-conscious, more like she was somewhere else, thinking about something that had nothing to do with cars. Every so often, I'd glance up, and she'd meet my eyes, just for a second longer than people usually do. When I finished, she thanked me, reached into her purse. I shook my head. "Don't worry about it." Her brow lifted. "You run a free repair service now?" The corner of her mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. "I guess tonight I do." There was a pause. Not awkward, exactly, but aware. The kind of silence where both people feel something shifting but can't name it. The rain outside softened. The sound of her heels echoed again as she moved toward the door, then stopped. "Have you eaten?" she asked. I almost said no out of habit, but her tone, that mix of authority and weariness, made it sound like a question she didn't often ask anyone. We ended up in a small diner a few blocks away, the kind of place that smelled like burnt coffee and nostalgia. She ordered soup. I got whatever the special was. We talked about nothing important, traffic, bad coffee, the weather's mood swings. Still, I couldn't stop studying her face in the dim light, the faint lines around her eyes, the way she looked at the world like she'd already lived through too many versions of it. At one point, she laughed, quietly, but it filled the space. I don't even remember what I said that made her. What I remember is the way her hand brushed against mine when she reached for her cup. It wasn't intentional, I don't think, but she didn't move it right away either. After dinner, she thanked me again for the tire, the company, the conversation. Her voice softened when she said it, almost like it was meant for someone she used to know. When she left, the bell above the diner door rang twice. I watched her cross the street, her coat catching the wind, her pace unhurried. It's been days, but I keep thinking about that touch. How ordinary it was, how brief, and how it still feels like it's waiting to finish saying something. And I don't know why, but I can't stop replaying it. That moment, her voice, the space between us, as if something started that night, and neither of us had the courage to name it. She came back a week later. Same car, same calm expression, though the excuse this time was a routine check. I knew that was a lie, and I think she knew I knew. It was a gray morning, the kind that made everything look washed out. She leaned against the counter while I pretended to check her tire pressure. I could feel her eyes moving, scanning the room, tracing the streaks of oil, the framed photo of my father by the register. "You work alone?" she asked. "Most days," I said, kneeling by the wheel. "Keeps things simple." She hummed softly, as if simplicity was a luxury she hadn't tasted in years. Her nails tapped once against the metal counter, slow, deliberate, the kind of rhythm people use when they're trying not to speak. I asked her if she wanted coffee while I ran diagnostics. She hesitated, then nodded. "2 sugars," she said after a beat, like she was remembering what it felt like to be taken care of. I watched her through the reflection of the glass cabinet as she sat down. Posture perfect, shoulders straight. Yet something about her looked fragile that morning. Maybe it was the way she held her cup with both hands, or how she stared into it like she was trying to find herself in the steam. "You don't look like someone who breaks things," I said. Her eyes lifted. "What makes you think that?" "You're too careful," I said quietly. People like that don't usually end up here twice. That earned a small laugh, thin, almost shy. Then she sighed, and it caught in her throat halfway out. You'd be surprised how often careful people still make a mess of things. The air between us shifted. She looked down quickly, pretending to brush a crumb from her skirt. Her fingers lingered there, trembling just enough to notice. I wanted to ask what she meant, but I didn't. Instead, I told her the car was fine. It was. She knew that too. She stood, smoothing her coat. Then I suppose I've wasted your time. Not really. That made her pause. She looked at me, really looked this time. There was something behind her eyes, a flicker of warmth mixed with exhaustion, as if she wanted to step closer but didn't trust herself to. I should go, she said, voice quiet but unsteady. Sure. But she didn't move. Her hand rested on the counter, inches from mine. The air felt heavier than before, like the world had gone still just to see what we'd do next. Then she whispered, almost to herself, "You're too kind." And before I could answer, she turned and walked out, her perfume trailing behind her like a memory I wasn't supposed to keep. I stood there for a long time after the door closed, the cup she'd used still warm in my hand, wondering why it felt like I'd just witnessed something private, something she hadn't meant to show, something I wasn't sure I was ready to feel. The rain started before sunset, sharp, slanting lines against the garage window. I just locked up when I saw her car parked outside again, wipers still moving even though she wasn't inside. She sat in the passenger seat, phone pressed to her ear. Through the glass, I could see the tension in her shoulders, a stillness that didn't belong to calm, but to control. I hesitated before walking over, knocking gently on the window. She jumped, then rolled it down halfway. Sorry, she said. I didn't mean to hide. I finished. That earned a faint smile, tired, almost defeated. Something like that. I told her to come in until the rain passed. She didn't argue. Inside, the air smelled like damp air filters and coffee grounds from earlier. She stood by the workbench, tracing the edge of a wrench with her finger. I watched her take off her coat, slowly, like she was buying herself time before something she didn't want to say. You okay? I asked. She exhaled, then sat on the stool across from mine. You ever get a call that makes you forget how to breathe? I nodded. Too many times. She looked at me, and for once, didn't look away. My ex-husband, she said quietly. He wants to meet. Says he's changed. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't. Silence filled the space between us, and somehow that felt kinder than words. The rain outside softened to a steady rhythm, almost like background music to the hesitation hanging in the air. I don't know why I told you that, she murmured. Maybe because I won't try to fix it, I said. That made her laugh, a small, grateful sound. You really don't. Her hand brushed a stray piece of paper off the counter. It fluttered between us before landing near my foot. When I bent to pick it up, her fingers grazed my wrist. Just once, light, but enough to stop both of us. Neither of us moved. There was nothing romantic about it. No swelling music, no cinematic timing. Just two people sitting too close in a room too quiet, each pretending they weren't aware of how the other was breathing. You should go, I said finally, even though I didn't mean it. I know. She didn't move. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere distant. The sound seemed to linger longer than it should have. She looked at the window, then back at me, eyes reflecting the dim light. I don't even know what this is, she whispered. Neither do I. Something flickered across her face, maybe relief, maybe fear. She stood, pulling her coat on again with a quiet urgency, as if staying a moment longer would make something happen she couldn't take back. At the door, she hesitated. You shouldn't be this kind, she said softly. And then, before I could respond, she reached out, brushed her fingers over my sleeve, and left. The rain had stopped by the time I stepped outside, but the air still felt heavy, charged, like something had almost happened, and we both knew it might again. She stopped coming by for a while after that storm. 2 weeks, maybe 3. Long enough for me to almost convince myself it didn't matter. Then one evening, just as I was closing up, I saw her car again, headlights idling in the dark, not moving. I opened the garage door halfway. She stepped out slowly, no umbrella this time, hair damp, coat unbuttoned. Something in her face had changed, softer, but heavier. I was driving around, she said, voice low. I didn't mean to end up here. Sure, I said quietly. Accidents happen. She smiled faintly, then walked past me into the dim light. She didn't take off her coat this time, just stood near the workbench, eyes tracing the space like it remembered her. For a while, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It just was, like another presence between us. The clock ticked. Rain dripped from her sleeve onto the floor. I could hear her breathing, slow and uneven. You were right, she said finally. About what? About people breaking things, she whispered. Even careful ones. Her eyes met mine. There was no guard in them tonight, no practiced calm. Just fatigue, the kind that doesn't come from lack of sleep, but from holding too much for too long. I keep thinking I can control how people make me feel, she said. That if I stay busy enough, distracted enough, I'll be safe. And are you? I asked. She shook her head. No. I stepped closer, just enough to see the reflection of my hands trembling in the metal counter. You don't have to explain, I said. I think I do, she replied. Because if I don't, this, she gestured between us, starts to feel real. And it can't be. The way she said it, soft, deliberate, as if she was convincing herself, made something inside me tighten. I know it can't, I said, but that doesn't stop it from being there. Her lips parted slightly, as if to speak, then closed again. A pause, then another. Finally, what are we doing? Her voice wasn't angry. It was tired, afraid, maybe a little lost. I didn't have an answer. The words that came felt clumsy. I think we're trying not to need what we already do. She looked down. I thought she might cry, but she didn't. Instead, she let out a breath that sounded almost like surrender. This isn't fair to you, she said. Maybe not, I murmured. But I don't think fairness has anything to do with it. For a long time, she just stood there, quiet, eyes shining in the low light. Then she reached for her keys, her fingers brushing mine once more, slow, hesitant, like a habit she couldn't break. When she finally spoke, it wasn't what I expected. I wish I'd met you at a time when I wasn't already pretending to be fine. And then she left, not in anger, but with the kind of silence that felt permanent. I told myself I wouldn't go back. Not after the last time, not after what I said. But I kept seeing his face in small, irrelevant places. The coffee shop where the barista laughed like him. The hum of a car engine that stalled the same way his did when he leaned over it, muttering softly to himself. I told myself it was coincidence. It never was. That afternoon, I sat in my car outside his garage for 15 minutes before stepping out. The world looked faded, wind pressing against the windshield like it wanted me to turn back. I didn't. He looked surprised to see me, not startled, just quiet. That quiet that comes from someone who's tried not to hope. I didn't think you'd come back, he said. Neither did I. I handed him a small envelope, folded, creased from being in my coat pocket too long. I found this last week. I don't know why I brought it. He looked down at it, but didn't open it. What is it? Something my daughter wrote, I said, voice barely audible. She passed away 5 years ago. I found it while cleaning out an old box. He froze, eyes softening. I'm sorry. I nodded. She was 22. Just a year older than you. The silence that followed felt different this time. Deeper, less fragile. He didn't reach for me. Didn't speak. Just listened, really listened. In that way people rarely do. She wrote about someone she loved, I said. Someone kind. Someone who made her laugh, even when she was scared. I used to read it and wonder who he was. I looked at him then. And then I met you. And realized I finally understood what she meant. He didn't move, didn't blink. The air between us felt charged, not with attraction, but recognition, like we'd both stumbled into a space that wasn't meant for either of us. I shouldn't have told you that, I whispered. I just needed someone to know she existed, that I still miss her. He nodded, jaw tightening slightly. I'm glad you told me. I smiled weakly. You remind me of her. Not in looks, in how you see people. You don't try to fix them, you just stay. A tear slipped down before I could stop it. I turned away quickly, pretending to brush dust from my sleeve. He reached out, not to touch, but to steady the air between us somehow. His voice was rough when he spoke. You don't have to be strong right now. For the first time in years, I let myself believe him. I didn't cry. I just breathed. Slow, uneven, real. When I finally looked up, he was still there, eyes glassy, lips parted like he wanted to say something but didn't know how. That's when I realized the truth. He wasn't saving me. We were both standing inside the same emptiness, trying to keep each other from falling through it. And in that moment, I wished the world would stop, just long enough for me to stay there. Not fine, not strong, just seen. The letter stayed on my desk for days after she left. I didn't open it, but I couldn't bring myself to move it either. It sat there, small, folded, soft around the edges, like it carried the weight of something too private for me to touch. When she came back, there was no explanation. She just stepped inside, nodded at the letter still in the same spot, and said, "You kept it." I didn't know if I should. "I think that's why you should have," she said quietly. She sat down on the old stool again, the same one where we'd traded silence so many times before. The late light poured through the open door, painting the dust in gold. Outside, a breeze carried the smell of cut grass and rain. Inside, the world was still. Neither of us tried to start a conversation. It was as if words would have broken something delicate we were finally learning to hold. After a while, she said, "You remind me of who I used to be." I looked at her, but she didn't meet my eyes. "That's not a bad thing." "It is," she said softly, "because it makes me want to be her again. And I know I can't." I didn't say anything. I just stepped closer until the distance between us felt real enough to notice. She didn't move away this time. Her shoulders relaxed, her breath steadied. "Do you ever think," she said after a moment, "that we meet people at the wrong time, but for the right reason?" "All the time," I said. Her lips curved slightly, not a smile, more like the ghost of one. "Then maybe that's what this is." We stood there like that, two people who had run out of excuses, standing in the quiet honesty of what neither of us had planned. No declarations, no promises, just the ache of knowing something unspoken had already been said 100 times through silence. She reached for the letter, folded it again, and set it aside. Her fingers lingered on the paper before brushing against mine. The contact was light, too light to mean what it did, but my pulse still jumped. "You can keep it," she whispered. "I don't want to take anything from you." Her eyes lifted then, finally meeting mine. "You're not taking. You're holding." Something in me gave way, quietly, like a door finally clicking open. I don't remember who moved first. All I remember is sitting beside her on the cold concrete floor, our shoulders touching, our breaths sinking to the hum of the evening air. No words, no pretense, just the quiet collapse of two people who had spent too long pretending they weren't already falling. The last light slipped from the window. She leaned her head against my shoulder, not seeking comfort, just presence. And for the first time, I didn't try to name what it was. I just let it be. The simple, unbearable truth of it, that sometimes love doesn't arrive. It just stops leaving. It's been almost a year since the night she leaned her head on my shoulder. I still work at the same garage. The same clock ticks too loud. The same dust catches the same late light. But somehow, everything feels quieter now, like the world finally learned how to breathe with me instead of against me. She doesn't come by often. Sometimes she'll drive past, slow enough for me to notice, fast enough to pretend she wasn't meaning to. Once in a while she'll stop, just for a cup of coffee, just to ask how I'm doing, just to make sure the silence between us still knows her name. It always does. We never talked about what happened. We didn't need to. It wasn't that kind of story. There were no confessions, no vows. Just a space where two people found a strange kind of peace. One that didn't fit into anyone's idea of right or wrong. I used to think love was supposed to be loud. A declaration, a fight, a burning thing. But what she taught me was quieter. It's the pause before you speak. The hand that doesn't quite touch. The way you notice someone's absence before you admit you miss them. There's this one moment I keep replaying. The day she came by to say goodbye without saying it. She stood in the doorway, smiled that tired, careful smile, and said, "Take care of yourself." I wanted to ask if that meant she wouldn't, but I didn't. I just nodded. After she left, I found the old letter again, Her daughter's words folded inside, still creased where she had touched it. I finally opened it. It wasn't long, just a few sentences about love, written by someone who never got the chance to grow old. Love isn't about time. It's about recognition. The moment you see someone and understand you'll never unsee them. That line has stayed with me. Maybe that's what she and I were. Two people who recognized each other too late and too deeply to undo it. Sometimes, when the rain starts tapping against the windows again, I catch myself listening for her voice. Not expecting it, just remembering how it sounded when she laughed. Quiet, but whole. I think she's okay now. I like to believe that. That she's found her rhythm again, somewhere softer than before. As for me, I still fix cars, still drink bad coffee, still think about her whenever the air smells like rain and engine oil. But it doesn't ache the way it used to. It just hums, like a song that never really ends, it just fades. And maybe that's enough. Maybe love doesn't always need to stay. Sometimes it just needs to leave you better than it found you. If you've ever had someone who changed you, even for a moment, tell me what stayed with you. Because sometimes, that's how stories like ours live on.